Okay, guys. First off, I want you to just make a quick note. 1 week from today, or close to 1 week from today. Let me just check and make sure. I put. Yeah, so 1 week from today, you're going to have your Unit 2 test. So pretty much all of this week will be a review from a lot of the topics from Unit 2, which is the industrialization, immigration, and the progressive era. If you notice, the video perfectly goes along with that. As you'll see, the first 3 questions are related to immigration. Questions 3 through 6 are with industrialization, and then questions 7 through 14, if you scroll all the way down, are dealing with urbanization and the progressive era. So this video is going to be our first set of review for this week. I would definitely mention that this video will take 2 periods. We're probably going to get about halfway done with this period, which is fine. This is a very good video for seeing how our country got more immigrants and grew and improved and started to have a lot more industry. All right, so the first question is going to deal with 2 things. Okay, so take a look at 1 and 1A. What was given by the French as a gift for the United States for their 100th birthday? And how did we pay for this gift? All right, so I'm going to play the video. Keep an eye on the chat. We'll fill in the the questions together, and we'll go through and see how we started to have a lot more immigrants come into the country.
A new generation on a wild new frontier, rising into the sky. Gleaming towers of steel, a bold new urban landscape, and maybe America's greatest invention, the modern vertical city. We are pioneers and trailblazers. We fight for freedom. We transform our dreams into the truth. Our struggles will become a nation. America, land of invention. Hot dogs, jazz, the elevator, skyscrapers. This is the story of the greatest innovation of all, the modern vertical city. One world-famous icon has come to symbolize it. Amazingly, we very nearly didn't have it. It's 1885, and New York City has a big problem. A magnificent gift, but with some assembly required. Scattered across Bedloes Island in New York Harbor in 214 crates. They contain the largest statue in the Western world. It's been donated by the people of France to celebrate the centenary of the Declaration of Independence. Built in Paris, broken down into 350 massive pieces for the journey to America. That's the problem. The cost of reassembling it will be astronomical. Money New York does not have. At least 6 other U.S. cities are jockeying to give it a home. New York City is in danger of losing the Statue of Liberty. Not if this man can help it. Joseph Pulitzer, tenacious newspaper magnate, immigrant, self-made man. He owns the biggest paper in the U.S., the New York World. And he's determined to keep liberty in New York Harbor. Through his chain of newspapers, Pulitzer launches the biggest fundraising campaign ever seen in North America.
It would be an irrevocable disgrace to New York City and the American Republic to have France send us this splendid gift without our having provided even so much as a landing place for it.
We must raise the money.
More than 1 million people read Pulitzer's papers every day.
Enclosed, please find 25 cents as my
$1.
contribution
The
towards
contents of our
statue.
little savings bank, which we
10
cheerfully
o'clock
contribute to the
Club
pedestal.
resolved to send you the contents of the first jackpot. You will find enclosed $4.
The money we saved to go to the circus with.
Donations flood in from all across the country. Rich and poor, east and west. Pennies and nickels, fives and tens, even thousands of dollars. In all, a staggering 121,000 donations. More than enough to keep this iconic statue in New York.
I think a statue is not just a statue. I think symbols really matter. I think they signify in a big way. In fact, maybe they do more than reams and reams and reams of legislation and paper and print.
Now the real work begins. To hold a statue 150 feet high,
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so number one is asking, what did the French give us as a gift for the 100-year anniversary of our Declaration of Independence? That would be the Statue of Liberty. They gave it to us as a gift, but as you can tell, it doesn't, it's not put together. So it is our responsibility to put it together. Now, why I love starting off with this is two things. The Statue of Liberty is a symbol for immigrants of freedom, of coming into the country. And then number two, it's the first time where in our history we could probably put something together like this. We have the resources, we have the industry to now do it. You're going to see how they put this massive thing together. How did the country pay for this gift? Well, one of my favorite things about the Statue of Liberty is that the people donated money to build it. Okay? If this wasn't built by the government, it wasn't funded by the government, the people donated their money and their hard-earned money to pay for this thing. So it was us who built this, and I find that to be a really awesome thing. Okay, number two, you might know already. It's going to come up in a little bit. I just want you to enjoy the process of how the Statue of Liberty is built and how it was put together today.
the pedestal will be the biggest concrete structure in the world. Over 200 men work through a grueling winter to complete it. As the last of the cement dries, workers toss in their own silver dollars for good luck. Next, Liberty's enormous iron skeleton. It's designed by Gustave Eiffel, who will build the famous Eiffel Tower in Paris. The skeleton is 151 feet tall, and with the pedestal, it's the height of a 30-story office block. Now for the outer layer. Wrapping around the skeleton are 60,000 pounds of hand-sculpted copper. The sandal is 32 times bigger than a human foot, the equivalent of a size 879 shoe. It's on-the-job training, often at 300 feet in the air. It's as difficult as it is dangerous. They need to fix 300 pieces of copper shell to the framework with more than 300,000 rivets. Her robes have over 4,000 square yards of copper. Her outstretched arm is 42 feet long. A fingernail weighs 3.5 pounds. The scale of liberty is unimaginable. After 6 months of hazardous construction, there are no fatalities, and Liberty's 17-foot face is finally winched into position. It's bigger than Lincoln's on Mount Rushmore. It's said the sculptor, Frederick August Bartholdi, modeled the face on his own mother. It takes 25 years for Liberty to oxidize and turn green. A functioning lighthouse until 1902, the statue's official name is Liberty, Enlightening the World. At first, a symbol of the alliance and friendship between France and the 13 colonies in the American Revolution, it will come to represent much more. At the entrance to New York Harbor, the Statue of Liberty becomes a beacon to the world and a welcome to millions. Later, a poem by Emma Lazarus in her base celebrates America as a land of refugees.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Over the next 2 decades, more than 12 million immigrants passed the Statue of Liberty on their way to Ellis Island, the first stop for most new Americans.
Imagine what it took for someone to leave Eastern Poland or Lithuania or some village in the mountains of northern Italy and come all the way to this strange place with nothing.
Today, more than 100 million Americans can trace their roots back to ancestors who came through Ellis Island.
If you go back only 150 years in our 200, almost 50-year history, 95% of the people were not here. There are no roots. They all came from someplace else. So to me, America represents the best of the human spirit.
A guidebook prepares arrivals for a new life in a new world.
Forget your customs and ideals. Select a goal and pursue it with all your might. You will experience a bad time, but sooner or later, you will achieve your goal. Don't take a moment's rest. Run.
And from Ellis Island, they spread out across the continent. For the most part, Irish, Russians, and Italians to big cities, Germans to the Midwest, Scandinavians to farmland. At the dawn of the 20th century, eventually, there will be more Italians in New York than in Rome. From 1880 to 1930, nearly 24 million new immigrants arrive in the U.S. A new era in U.S. history is about to begin.
Okay, so number 2. Who was able to catch what number 2 was? Someone write down what number 2 was. This is review, and this is obviously something that they just talked about. Where do people, when they pass the Statue of Liberty, come into? Okay, came into New York City. Okay, and what was that island that they went into? What was it called? It was called Ellis Island. This is review. Make sure you guys know that. I'm looking at your test right now. I'm just like making it up and making sure all the questions are fine, and that is definitely one of the questions. Okay, so make sure you know they came in through the United States and they came into Ellis Island. All right, so now the video is gonna, like we did, okay, we started with immigration. Now it's going to transfer to industrialization with the rise of immigrants coming into the country. Many of them took industrial jobs. Now we're gonna see how industrialization, okay, the fact becomes a huge part of our country. All right, so take a look at number 3. Why is steel so important to the growth of cities? We're gonna focus in on Andrew Carnegie coming up soon.
By the early 20th century, new urban megacities around America are bursting to the seams and look to expand in a new direction, up. But building these great towers demands a critical ingredient that's much too expensive: steel. One man will change all that, and with it, the face of America. He'll risk everything and almost lose it all. It's 1872, and Andrew Carnegie, a 5'3" Scottish immigrant iron millionaire, is in Sheffield, England. He's looking at the future. A revolutionary way to make steel. Steel has been around for thousands of years, but so expensive to produce, it's always been a luxury item. 2,000 years ago, it's used in Oriental swords. It is even used in designer jewelry. But America stands at the brink of a new age. To build it, they need steel, and lots of it. It's the only material strong enough for the towers that will touch the sky. An English bullet maker is showing Carnegie a new but simple method of producing steel. He's stunned. Blast hot air through molten iron. Carbon impurities burn off. You get the wonder material: steel. For the first time, it can be produced quickly and inexpensively. If Carnegie can use this Bessemer process to mass produce it, he'll own the future. Carnegie returns to the States, to Pittsburgh, to start building the biggest steel plant in the world. It'll be larger than 80 football fields. It's a massive gamble. Carnegie risks everything he's got on the new plant. But only months into construction, disaster. A catastrophic stock market collapse. The economy is in free fall. He has to borrow even more money and barely scrapes through. August 1875. Against all odds, Carnegie's giant furnaces are ready to test. Steel production is phenomenally dangerous. Inside, 5 tons of molten metal. 3,000 degrees. Hot enough to vaporize a man in seconds. If it works, it will make Carnegie one of the richest men in the world. But there's a lot more at stake. Skyscrapers, cars, washing machines, airplanes, even space travel. None of it can happen if steel can't be mass-produced.
Okay, so number 3, why is steel so important to the growth of cities? So steel is basically iron. Okay, when you blast enough hot air through it, it creates this very strong material. And this straw material is the only thing that can hold up large buildings like skyscrapers. So if you try and build a skyscraper with something other than steel, eventually the thing's going to collapse or topple over. And so steel, if we want to have a more industrial era and we have a more industrial time, we need steel. Okay, but steel is so incredibly expensive. It wasn't invented by Andrew Carnegie. Don't make that mistake. But Andrew Carnegie is going to try to find a way to mass produce it. So he wants to do a couple things. Okay? Now what you're looking at is he's doing something called, in one of the machines in Pittsburgh, called the Bessemer process. And what that is they're trying to take a lot of iron, and they're trying to blast enough hot air through it to create a lot of steel. Now, what you're looking for is a controlled explosion, basically. It's kind of cool to make steel. Too big of an explosion, and you blow up the factory, and everyone dies. So that's not good. Not a big enough explosion. If the explosion's not big enough, you're just going to have very hot iron. So it's not going to really do much. Okay, so see how this process kind of takes place, and then we'll answer questions 4 and 5.
It's a success. Carnegie is the first ever to mass produce steel. Prices plummet by over 80%. Output rockets from a few thousand tons in 1860 to 11 million by 1900.
So many American stories of success are diligence, perseverance, but there's an awful lot of luck involved too.
His timing couldn't have been better. It was steel that built American cities. It was steel that built American railroads. It was steel that built American shipping. By the beginning of the 20th century, he was one of the wealthiest men in America.
Pittsburgh transforms from a sleepy town to the industrial heart of the nation. Its population triples. Driven by a new steel railroad, millions of tons of steel are transported across America, the raw material to build the modern city. And the grandest of all is New York. It's an
Okay, so for the review, mass produce is a word that we wrote down earlier on in class. I want to review what the word means. Andrew Carnegie didn't invent steel. He was the first one to mass produce it. And if you find a way to mass produce a product, that's probably going to lead you to be extremely rich and famous for it, because if the product's very important. So when you mass produce something, there's three things to it. You make a lot of a product, you make it cheaply, and you make it quickly. Okay, when you could do those three things, that's going to bring the cost of something down. That means a lot of people can now purchase it. Okay, why this pencil? Why there's so many pencils and pens around is because it's very easy to mass produce a pencil. You can make a lot of this product, you can make it cheaply and quickly, therefore it's something that a lot of people can buy. Okay, number 5, why is the NFL team, the last night the Pittsburgh Steelers played, right? If you guys watch the NFL. Why do you think the NFL team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, are called the Steelers? Well, in Pittsburgh is where steel was kind of invented, and most of the steel in America is produced there. So therefore, they call their NFL team the Steelers. All right, so that's 4 and 5. Now, number 6, we're going to look at the job of a roughneck. This is a job my great-grandfather did back back when he came to the country. You'll see it's a very tough and a very dangerous job, but it was a job that was very good to kind of live through. All right. So let's take a look at this roughneck job, and you'll kind of get a better sense of, you know, working conditions, you know, throughout the city and in factories and around the around New York City. All right, so 6 is coming up right now.
Era of obscene opulence. New York is a playground for super-rich industrialists and financiers. Wildly extravagant, they smoke cigars rolled in $100 bills. Their wives' hats studded with diamonds. This is the Gilded Age. Land values are the highest in the world. There's only one place to go: up. By 1902, 65 skyscrapers are being constructed in Manhattan. This is one of them. It's called walking the steel. This man is 30 stories above the street. His first time at this height. No harness or safety rope. One slip, and he's dead. Veterans are called fixers. The novices are snakes, because working with them can be deadly. The old hands know just how dangerous it can be.
Thing I hate worse than poison is to take on a new man when we're near the top. They all get used to it or get killed.
No hard hats, just a 280-foot drop. A sudden gust of wind, and it's all over. They're up here 8 hours a day. Meals when they can. No bathroom breaks. They're called roughnecks, European immigrants and Mohawk Indians. Many were sailors and bridge workers, so they're used to heights.
The guy's balancing on the beams. I think it took a lot of bravery. I think it took a lot of skill, a lot of, you know, physically challenging. But I also think you had to be a little crazy.
The stakes couldn't be higher. It's a risk they're willing to take. The pay is $4 a day, twice the going rate for manual labor. Foreman William Starrett sums up his dangerous job.
Building skyscrapers is the nearest peacetime equivalent of war. Even to the occasional grim reality of an accident or a maimed body, even death, remind us that we are fighting a war of construction against the forces of nature.
He makes it. Many aren't so lucky. 2 roughnecks out of 5 die or are disabled on the job.
Okay, so you see, it's a pretty crazy job. Okay, they're the ones that build the skyscrapers. They don't exactly say, but I think you could tell. You know, why did 2 out of every 5 roughnecks on the job? So why don't I leave that one to you guys? Write some reasons down why 2 out of every 5 roughnecks would die on the job here. Either unmute yourself or write in the chat. What makes this job so dangerous?
They're in the air.
Okay, they're in the air. What else? What's so dangerous about being in the air? They have to balance themselves on a thin beam. You're high up and there's no safety ropes. Ah, okay, good. So we're putting it all together now. Look at a person that works construction or works on a skyscraper today. They have harnesses. So if God forbid you fall off, okay, you fall off, you kind of just float around and can work yourself back onto the beam. Okay, if you fall off, it's over. God, you're dead. All right, this is a very, very dangerous job. Okay, so you could say no harnesses or safety net. Right, and if people fell, they fall to their deaths. Okay. Last thing, let's see. We got Trump coming up, giving a little quick speech, and then we're going to go into this thing called the Flatiron Building. Then we'll get into number 7.
Whoever had the imagination to design and build some of the great structures of New York, I'm inspired by.
In 1902, in New York, this is what the future looks like. The Flatiron Building. Its triangular footprint determined by the intersection of 3 streets, not 2. The steel frame means the outside can be hung in sections like a suit of clothes. Now the walls don't take the weight, the steel does. It's so radical, when people first see it, they think it will blow over and kill them. A lawsuit is filed claiming winds focused by the Flatiron's extreme shape damage a nearby shop. Today, it's one of our best-loved buildings. Inside, the other breakthrough that lets towers rise into the clouds, the elevator. Before it, the tallest buildings stop mostly at 5 floors. No more walking upstairs now, so the sky's the limit. For the first time, the higher the floor, the higher the rent.
You think it's a fairly humble invention, but when Otis invented the first really safe elevator, it enabled the growth of the modern city where people could come in, build much taller buildings, get a much higher density of people.
And sure enough, by the end of the 19th century, the urban population has increased 87 times over. In Chicago alone, in just 10 years, they built 50 steel frame buildings. And in 20 years, its population more than doubles to almost 1.7 million. American cities are exploding. But for many,
okay, the last one I'm doing today is number 7. This is going to be the start of the progressive era. We know there's a rise of people moving into the cities now through urbanization. With this rise of people does come some problems, despite all of the good things that come. So take a look at number 7. It's not something we've done yet together. This is the first time you're being introduced to it in the video today.
living in the shadow of these new towers will prove even harder than building them. In America in 1890, crime and poverty are rife on the streets. But these mavericks are about to make a difference. Gangsters, murderers, thieves, and fear are on the streets. New tabloid newspapers splash crime all over the front pages. In Chicago, you can rent a gun by the hour. In the Sears catalog, you can buy one for $12. In New York, a policeman finds a list on a murdered gangster, his rate card. Punches, $2. Nose and jaw broke, $10. Ear chewed off, $15. The big job, $100 and up. Detective Bureau Chief Thomas Burns, a man who follows his own set of rules. He's shrewd. And he's very tough. Among his methods is a technique his detectives call the third degree. First degree, persuasion. Second degree, intimidation. Third degree, pain. In 4 years, Burns claims he's arrested 3,300 criminals. He solved the biggest heist of the 19th century, nearly a $3 million Manhattan bank robbery. Reporters call him the greatest crime buster in the history of the New York City police force.
His very manner, the size of him, his menacing shoulders and arms, the bark of his voice.
Pickpockets, forgers, whoever cracked a safe, unscrupulous rogues.
Crooks are now afraid of their shadows.
They lead double lives.
But tracking down criminals isn't easy. There's no official ID, no birth certificates or driver's licenses. If a criminal is known in one town, he just moves to the next. Criminals are anonymous. Burns is tackling this problem head-on and bringing police work into a new age. This is his rogues gallery. Mugshots of 7,000 known lawbreakers. Using photography to identify criminals will change detective work forever.
Annie Royley, alias Little Annie. Deceitful servant.
The mugshots are distributed to police departments around the country. But these are more than just pictures. Burns is also building psychological profiles of criminals.
Rufus Minor. He comes from a very good family. It's a pity he's a thief.
This is the first attempt to create a national crime register.
A city as diverse as ours is going to have a significant crime problem that you've got to be on top of.
Even today, mugshots still catch criminals. 12 million are taken every year nationwide. That's more than the entire population of Ohio. And it all began with the Rogues Gallery over 120 years ago.
Any questions?
Okay, so he's a little bit of a different type of muckraker. We see how he used his police skills in a little bit of a different way. The more intimidation and pain, that was actually more okay back in American history. What he was doing was not necessarily wrong. But what does he create for his police officers to help catch criminals? That is basically the mugshot. Okay, what we still use today is the mugshot. And those, if you ever know someone or anyone that's committed a crime, you take a photo of that person. So, and you give a description of what the crime was that they committed, so you can be on the lookout for them. Understand, back in American history, if you committed a crime in one city, you can go to another city and commit a new crime, the same crime, and no one know who you are. All right, so this kind of stopped people from doing that. Okay, so once number 7 is filled in, he created the mugshot. You guys are good to go. There is nothing to turn in today because this is a 2-day lesson. The next time I see you will be on Wednesday. Okay, and we'll finish up this video and do a little quick review thing as well. Okay, a little matching column. All right, so 8A6, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Mr. Eli, good morning. Just so you know, I have 3 classes. I have 8B6, 8D7, and 8D6. I'm going to have to focus in on teaching 8D6. So I'm going to have 8D7, basically.
Excellent. Samantha, wrap it up. Nope, go ahead, Samantha.
I'm sorry, Penny. You cut off at the end.
No problem. I'm going to have 8D7, Tristan's class, learn asynchronously. So I'm going to post a YouTube with an assignment on their Google Classroom. But I'm basically going to say that a lot of them don't have to be in the meet.
Okay.
So I'm just letting you know. So I'm going to
appreciate it.
What's it? Is this the beginning of the video?
What, Sebastian?
Is this the beginning of the video?
I'm going to the beginning of the video. 1 second.
How about put it all the way to 0? It's not the video.
Thank you.